morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, which today is a whole casting episode. And we're going to start out with what is supposed to be a big casting announcement, but as many of you pointed out yesterday, wasn't as big as some of us might have expected. And that's that Benedict Cumberbatch is finally officially Doctor Strange. Which is funny because after months of speculation and what turned into a casting roller coaster for Marvel, where every hot actor in Hollywood in his 30s and then some got a turn to ride, they ended up exactly where they started with the actor who fans had initially recommended for the role. But if fans initially recommended him for the role, why didn't it make a big splash yesterday? Why wasn't it trending on Twitter? Why wasn't it splashed across every website and industry trade, right? What happened? Well, I think there are a couple of possible reasons, some of them totally reasonable, nothing for Marvel to worry about, and something for Marvel to worry about. But let's start off with the ones that can help Kevin Feige sleep at night. The first is that yesterday was a really busy day for movie news. You had the Bond conference in the morning about the official cast and title for the film, Bond 24, and then later in the day you had the debut of the Terminator Genesis trailer. So lots to discuss there. And while you might say, hey, well, Marvel usually can sweep aside all of its competition quite easily, this wasn't exactly new news. It had been discussed just a few weeks ago that Cumberbatch was in final negotiations for the role. And while some of us were like, hey, I'll believe it when it's finally confirmed because of all the false alarms with this movie in terms of who will play Doctor Strange, still, the idea had been put in our heads. It didn't come from nowhere. So there's no like, oh, who? There's no reaction like that. So those are the reasons that Marvel can say, hey, you know what, it did make a big splash, but whatever. Now let's go over to the reasons that, kind of worrisome, not so great. The one thing is that after all these different names they've bandied about for Doctor Strange at this point, maybe Benedict Cumberbatch is no longer the ideal choice for fans. Maybe fans have realized that they were a little too on the nose with their initial recommendation. The Hollywood Reporter wrote a whole article after the final negotiations headline came out about Cumberbatch, about how he was just too obvious a choice for the role potentially. And then when you hear names like Joaquin Phoenix and Jared Leto and Ewan McGregor, you start to think, well, maybe this would be a more interesting way to go with the character. It's unexpected. And that's something that Marvel's done really well, the unexpected. So it's almost bizarre, and this is the kind of the point of the Hollywood Reporter article, that they would do something that was so expected. So there's that problem, that Benedict Cumberbatch is no longer the ideal choice for the role. Now, the second problem is that because so many people haven't wanted the role and have turned it down, Joaquin Phoenix literally said no thanks after, a huge amount of time, negotiating, I'm saying speculation, because, it was announced that they were going to reveal him at Comic-Con, and then that didn't happen, and then, I think in the early fall, they, quietly said, but it did make headlines that he's no longer in negotiations, he's walked away. So with so many people walking away from a Marvel movie, I think it's led some of us to wonder what's wrong with this movie. And I think it's a little bit like the problem they have with Ant-Man, which is really, has a little bit of a black eye from Edgar Wright walking away. Who walks away from Marvel, right? If Joaquin Phoenix walks away and Edgar Wright walks away, what's wrong with the properties they're walking away from? And you can see that Marvel is still working on damage control over on Ant-Man. Evangeline Lilly just got a lot of press for talking about how Edgar Wright's version, while brilliant, just wasn't a fit with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It didn't fit. It wasn't a puzzle piece into the whole. And she even said, oh, I didn't sign at that point. I could have walked away, and I chose to stick it out because I believe in the Ant-Man film overall. And I think that was a very calculated and smart move on Marvel's part. And so maybe they have to do some damage control here with the Doctor Strange movie. But those I think, are the potential reasons it wasn't that exciting an announcement yesterday. But let's go on to what was announced, and then also some of the new questions that arise about the film now that the biggie's been answered, and that's, who is Doctor Strange? Well, Kevin Feige made an interesting official comment. He said, Stephen Strange's story requires an actor capable of great depth and sincerity. As opposed to all the other Marvel characters. If I were another Marvel actor, I'd be like, wait a minute, did you not see my powerful scene? In 2016, Benedict will show audiences, I was like, who had a powerful scene? And I'm like, Groot? There are going to be a lot of I am Groot messages, and with an angry tone on Kevin Feige's voicemail. But anyway, he continues saying, in 2016, Benedict will show audiences what makes Doctor Strange such a unique and compelling character. And right away, when I read that comment, I was like, oh, so that's why you wanted Joaquin Phoenix. Too bad you couldn't get him. But we'll see. I don't know if Benedict Cumberbatch can do this. I think he is a fantastic actor, by the way, and I just love him so much as Sherlock Holmes on the BBC. But I am continually unimpressed by his silver screen work. The only silver screen work that I really like that he's done is his voiceover work. So too bad Stephen Strange is human. But I thought he did a great job as Smaug, of course, in the Desolation of Smaug in the upcoming, I'm sure, The Battle of the Five Armies. And then also as Classified in Penguins of Madagascar for DreamWorks Animation. He's fantastic there. But his live action work, I mean, come on. I don't think anybody can really vouch for it. I think in Star Trek Into Darkness, he was not a very compelling Khan. I think in The Imitation Game, which I just saw, but I've gotten out of order, I'm sorry. But The Imitation Game, didn't like what he did as Alan Turing particularly. I thought it was uninspired. And I thought his Julian Assange was very by the numbers in The Fifth Estate. And then he's had little roles here and there. But even these little roles, like August Osage County, not really making a big impression. All you really do when you see them is go, oh, it's Sherlock, I love him, I want to see him do so well. Oh, but not here. Maybe the next one. And he's really a wonderful guy. I've gotten a chance to interview him twice now, and every time he's so professional and just such a great interview and really on point that I'm still rooting for him, even though I have not had really a reason to on the silver screen yet. So I don't know if he can do this. We'll see. But then the other thing they announced was the synopsis for the movie. And so it says, the film, directed by Scott Derrickson and with John Spates writing the screenplay, will follow the story of neurosurgeon Dr. Stephen Strange, who, after a horrific car accident, discovers the hidden world of magic and alternate dimensions. Hey, Kevin Feige, didn't you say no more origin stories? I guess that was a bunch of BS, but I can't get that upset about it, because I think Stephen Strange needs an origin story for two reasons. One, he's a very new character that nobody's really familiar with, so we have to familiarize people with him. So I think he needs that origin story. I don't like it when they try and get around that by doing flashbacks to establish a character's history. I think that takes some of the emotional heft away from them. And they said this movie's going to be full of emotion and heft. So I think that you need to show the actual progression of the character as it happens instead of hopping around. That hurt The Imitation Game, I feel, by the way, to some degree. But then the other reason is Doctor Strange has a fantastic origin story, so people should not be robbed of seeing it. So I'm very excited to see how this plays out, at least from the side of Doctor Strange, because I have become a Doctor Strange fan. I've read some very good Doctor Strange stories, in the past couple of years, and I think the character has tremendous potential. So what are the other questions about the movie overall? Now we have the origin story synopsis, and we know that it's going to be deep and personal, but is Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch going to show up? I think that's now a big question. They said he's going to discover the hidden world of magic and alternate dimensions. Well, who's going to be his guide? Will it be Scarlet Witch? I know we're all curious as to what the plans are for her post-Avengers 2 Age of Ultron, and this could very well be it. We also know that the rumors is that Daniel Bruhl, who's going to be playing a Marvel villain, who will be a factor in Captain America 3 Civil War, is also said to be the big villain here. So we'll see how he's incorporated and if that rumor turns out to be true. But then I think the next big casting announcement, by far and away, is who's playing Wong. And Wong is Stephen Strange's assistant, kind of like Kato to the Green Hornet, or Inspector Clouseau's assistant who's always testing him. Remember that guy? And I think this could be a really great role. And speaking of Kato, that's who I would go and get. I would go and get Jay Chu, who played Kato opposite Seth Rogen in the Green Hornet movie, because he was the best part of that movie. He was a fantastic actor. He did a great job with his action sequences. And I think that he made his character the sidekick, but yet not really the sidekick. He was cool enough to stand on his own, and I think that's what Wong needs to do. The idea of Wong is kind of antiquated, the Asian assistant, who knows the ancient ways. I feel that that's not really going to fit in today's world, more diverse world, so I'm hoping that he just becomes a great character in his own right. And this is a great new direction for Marvel to move in terms of their diversity. They're a little behind in that department. They're making a lot of strides, and they don't really have any prominent Asian characters, especially after they made Guy Pearce the Mandarin. So I'm very excited for who they cast, and I hope they don't do away with the character, but they might, because when you think about it, Wong makes Doctor Strange even more like Sherlock Holmes. And of course, that's the role Benedict Cumberbatch is famous for, with black hair no less, and a trench coat that's kind of cape-like. So I think that's a big hurdle for this movie, not making people not see Sherlock when they watched Stephen Strange. That's a hurdle for everybody involved, including Benedict Cumberbatch. So we'll see how this turns out. But I'm curious to what you think. Are you still excited about Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange? Or have you moved on from that idea, or you're just over the whole movie, or you're just, you need a break from it maybe just at least. All right, so what's the next big casting announcement? Well, this is that Ryan Reynolds is closing a deal, so don't expect a lot of excitement, Fox, when you make it official, but he's closing a deal to voice or play, but I think largely voice, Deadpool in the upcoming movie. That goes into production very soon. It goes into production in March, so that's really moving fast. It all happened thanks to that amazing test footage they put online that everyone had such a wonderful reaction to, which it deserved. Great test footage, very Deadpool-y. So, and Ryan Reynolds, of course, had provided the voiceover in that. So I'm glad he's getting the opportunity to do this. I still think he's a huge question mark as to the film overall in terms of box office because Ryan Reynolds' career is in such bad shape right now, and I don't know if it will ever recover. But then again, he's also just so well cast. I mean, who else? I mean, maybe if he was British, Russell Brand could do Deadpool, but Russell Brand doesn't get really any box office either. This is a real problem for this movie, in that the kind of character actor they need, unless Chris Pratt, we're going to talk about Chris Pratt in a second, unless he wants to voice Deadpool, I think that it's going to be hard to find someone who can pull off the comedic aspects of the role that also gets, following in the theater. So he's going to be doing it. Ryan Reynolds, all set. Everyone's wishes and dreams have come true. And the big question next is whether or not this will be the next X-Men movie we see, because it's set for February 2016, while X-Men Apocalypse isn't set until late May 2016. I would be surprised if Deadpool was the next one. I'd be a little nervous about, causing kind of a speed bump in between Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. Maybe I'd bump it after Apocalypse. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's big fan demand for it, and it is from the writers of Zombieland, and they did a great job there. But still, it's a little bit risky. But I'm curious, do you want Deadpool to be the next X-Men movie you see, or do you want to see Apocalypse and then Deadpool? Because they're not going to move X-Men Apocalypse. That late May release date is great for them. It's pretty much when they released Days of Future Past, and that worked out just swell. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third is about Chris Pratt. I had to choose here between Chris Pratt and Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones. And since that's technically TV, I went with Chris Pratt. Also, I'm excited about this Chris Pratt news. But also, I think Kristen Ritter, just on a side note, just so I can throw my 2 cents in there, I think she's kind of wrong for the role. I don't think she's going to make a great Jessica Jones. I question whether or not she can carry her own series. I don't think she's incredibly sympathetic. Maybe she'll change my mind. I do like her as a supporting character, but I don't see her in a lead capacity. Again, maybe she'll change my mind. But Chris Pratt, speaking of trying to change people's minds, I think Chris Pratt is trying to flesh out his career and how audiences think of him, I guess, showing audiences what he can do. Because it's been revealed that he's in final talks, or maybe initial talks, in some stage of talks, for Magnificent Seven. So Magnificent Seven, of course, is the remake of the remake. Of course, it's originally Seven Samurai. But this is the one that Denzel Washington and Antoine Fuqua are teaming on for their third film. They, of course, did Training Day together, and then most recently The Equalizer, which I thought was a fabulous film, as you might recall from my review. So I'm very excited about their Magnificent Seven. Now, of course, the first Magnificent Seven, this is apparently going to be a Western again, had a really all-star cast, an amazing cast of actors out of Hollywood. And it looks like they're going to be doing the same for this next installment, which is great. So often they're supposed to have a star-studded cast, and you're like, I don't know, I see a lot of diamond chips here, I think you really want this thing to sparkle. And I think that Chris Pratt is a great addition, and I think he brings a totally different audience than Denzel does. Denzel, I think, is more old school, people who like old school movie stars. I think Chris Pratt is very much the future of Hollywood, and coming off of one of the hottest movies of the year. In some ways, the hottest, Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think it's great for the movie to have Chris Pratt on board. Now, as for Chris Pratt, I think it's a very good opportunity for him because, as I said, Jurassic World and, this cowboy Viking ninja or cowboy Viking ninja Viking, I forget the order, it's all kind of similar. So I think that this is a really good opportunity for him to, again, show some dimension and that he can do a different type of movie. But then this is the big question, and this is what Chris Pratt needs to prove very quickly. And that's whether or not he can do a non-comedic role, and whether or not audiences want to see him do a non-comedic role. I mean, there were a lot of comments I recall seeing during the Jurassic World trailer where people were saying, I kept waiting for him to say something funny, but he never did. So that's a big question. I think in there he's going to be aided by the fact that he has a team of pet velociraptors. But, he'll be in a cool Western in Magnificent Seven, right? Probably, I'm assuming, with copious amounts of violence. But I can't see him being like... And then again, maybe he will be the comedic aspect of Magnificent Seven, and that is actually going to be a hindrance to Chris Pratt's career. Does he always have to be the guy cracking a joke? That's going to set up awfully high expectations for him for the rest of his career. He better go and find some great comedy writers to always bring with him to every project. But I'm curious, do you think this is as good a move for Chris Pratt's career as I do? And what do you think of Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington together? Who else do you think might be a good addition to the film? I mean, there's just literally so many people they could choose. And it's not a comic book universe, so they don't have to worry about who's tied up where. They really can just pick the best of the best. And I think with Denzel, Antoine Fuqua, and now Chris Pratt, a lot of people will want to join that project. So very exciting. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now on to the viewer question, and this comes from Anna Calder. And Anna says, great show today, Grace. I have a question. And she says, you said that TV has many hours to tell a story. It's true, I have. Well, with video games, they also have hours to tell stories, and it is a different experience for each player. How are they going to put all that story and how the player feels into one movie? Thanks a lot for making Morning Movie News. I love it. Thank you, Anna. I loved your comment. It was so nice. She said some other nice things, but, I wanted to just focus on her question. But, Anna, I read your entire comment, and it really made my day. But I think this is a great point that Anna brings up, and that we always talk about, well, I always mention this, and how TV has an advantage over movies, and it's become a problem for how movies adapt, television shows. I think the best example is Avatar: The Last Airbender, where M. Night Shyamalan tried to squeeze an entire season into a single running time of just under 2 hours for the movie. And that proved to not work, obviously. So that's a very good question about how do you do a video game, which are even longer in terms of hours of gameplay than a television show. And as she said, are tailor-made to each player because you control the game and what you experience. So my advice here is that I think what they're going to have to do, and I think this is hopefully what Warcraft is doing. Warcraft might be an exception because you play around, you explore a world while other things are going on in the background. This is what I believe. I'm not a Warcraft, StarCraft player, even though I've written for that universe some manga, as I mentioned recently in my coverage of the Warcraft movie. But I think that there's a story going on over there, and you're playing over here. So they're going to do the story, and you can just don't have to worry about the gameplay. And they have a lot of books and stuff going on, and they've really done a good job at Blizzard of already creating this set fictional universe. So I think that's going to help there. But as for games overall, I think what they're going to have to do is try to capture the spirit of the game. I think to totally try and do the game itself might not work for reasons that Anna mentioned. And also maybe they can just focus on a certain aspect of the game. I think, maybe how you can break it up. Maybe a game is a trilogy and you have to find the breakpoints for it instead of saying, oh, well, each game is an entire film. You have to figure out what is the correlation and how it breaks down in relation across the different mediums. So, and maybe video game adaptations are better suited for television. I recently was in the theater and I saw an ad for the Xbox series on Halo, the TV series they're doing, and it looked pretty good. It looked like it was really well produced, and I think maybe that's a good fit for Halo. I know they wanted to make a Halo movie, but that didn't work out. Now they're making their own TV show. So I'm curious to what you guys think. Do you think that this is going to be a similar obstacle for movie adaptations of video games, just like it was for television shows? And do you think that maybe video games are going in the wrong direction? They might feel there's more money in movies, but maybe that's a very short-term goal. Look at how successful The Walking Dead is, right? Maybe video games should be aiming at television. Write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Morning Movie News. And let me know what you'd like to see covered on Monday and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.